Chapter 1: The Danger Zone. In this section, you will learn that bacteria grows most quickly in the temperature range between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature range is known as the danger zone. In addition, when a bacterium grows, it produces poisons that cause illness. You will also learn cold food should remain 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, while hot food should remain 135 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter. If food enters the danger zone, it must be thrown out. Food safety is important to everyone. To you, because unsafe food practices can affect your health, your family's and friends' health, and employment too. To the public, because in our state, we've made it the law to protect our food supplies. To your customers, because it's their health and safety at risk. To your fellow workers, because it protects their jobs and their safety too. To your employees, because a clean, safe environment helps them stay in business. Clean is not the same as safe. Hands can look clean, but if they have germs on them, they are not safe. Food can smell good, but if there are germs, it is not safe. This is why all food workers, like you, must learn how to prevent illness with safe food and food service. The primary ways in which food becomes unsafe are contamination, cross-contamination. Contamination occurs when bacteria, parasites, viruses, or other microorganisms that grow and produce natural poisons come into contact with food. Contamination can also occur when food is exposed to chemicals such as cleansers or insecticides. Another type of contamination occurs when foreign objects, such as glass or bits of packaging, are accidentally mixed into food. Cross-contamination occurs when bacteria spread between food, surfaces, or equipment. Cross-contamination is most likely to happen when raw food touches or drips onto other food, equipment, or surfaces. Cross-contamination can also occur when unclean utensils, glassware, or dishware are used, or unclean work surfaces are used. Another common way for cross-contamination to occur is when people touch raw food with their bare hands. Foodborne illness comes from eating contaminated food. Foodborne illness is caused by organisms which cause illness or by chemicals. Food contaminated with organisms known to cause illness does not look, smell, or taste different from food not contaminated. Symptoms vary and may include diarrhea, vomiting, fever, cramping, and nausea. Depending on the cause, symptoms may develop in a few minutes to several days. Symptoms lasting several days can result in death. A foodborne illness outbreak occurs when 2 or more people experience the same illness after eating the same food. Disease-causing microorganisms most commonly cause these outbreaks. The cost of foodborne illness comes through in multiple ways. One way is through the loss of customers and revenue. Another way is the loss of business reputation or public embarrassment. Other ways include lawsuits, increased insurance premiums, lowered employee morale, increased employee absences, and the cost of training new employees. All foods should be handled safely, but some have a greater danger of contamination. Some foods that need extra attention are cut fruit, such as melons, fresh eggs and egg products, dairy products, tofu, packaged soy protein foods, meat and poultry, fish and shellfish, cooked beans, rice, and potatoes, heated vegetable-based foods, oils containing herbs, garlic, or other flavorings, and sprouts. As a food handler, it is your responsibility to be able to identify and prevent situations that can lead to foodborne illness outbreaks. 5 major mistakes that cause foodborne illness are inadequate hand washing, employees working while ill, cross-contamination, inadequate final cooking temperatures, inadequate temperature control, allowing foods to be in the danger zone. The activities that prevent foodborne illness are proper hand washing every time hands have become contaminated, food handlers working only when healthy, storing and handling of foods in a manner to prevent contamination, cook each animal product to its required final cooking temperature, maintaining hot and cold temperatures by keeping foods out of the danger zone. The role of management. The manager sets the tone of what food safety activities occur and don't occur within the facility. The Food Service Management is responsible for training and ensuring that food handlers practice the activities that prevent foodborne illness. The management is responsible for immediately contacting the local health authority if foodborne illness is suspected.
Chapter 2. Personal Hygiene. In this chapter, you will learn why personal hygiene is important, how and when to wash your hands the professional way, and personal grooming. You will also learn about gloves, hand sanitizers, and aprons, as well as clothing, jewelry, and hair restraints. Most importantly, you will learn safe food begins with high standards of personal hygiene and cleanliness on the part of the employee. A food handler's lack of personal hygiene can cause food to become contaminated and may result in customers becoming ill. Personal hygiene means keeping yourself clean and healthy. The human body carries germs inside and out, germs that can contaminate the food that customers eat or the surfaces they touch. By practicing the personal hygiene habits taught in this chapter, you can protect yourself from being the cause of foodborne illness. Washing your hands. Washing your hands well is one of the most important good health habits. It sounds too easy, but hand washing really works to wash away germs from your hands. Improper hand washing can increase the spread of infectious diseases, causing people to become ill. Hand washing is one of the most important steps in food safety. These are the times you must wash your hands. Before going on duty. Before you touch anything used to prepare food. Before putting on gloves. Before touching utensils that will touch food. Before touching foods that will not be cooked. After handling raw food, especially meats, fish, and poultry. After handling eggs. After touching your face, hair, or any other part of your body. After handling trash and take out the garbage. After handling dirty dishes. After cleaning or using other toxic substances. There are also times when you should wash your hands twice. Before starting work. Immediately after using the restroom, and again when you return to work. Coming back from break, especially after eating, drinking, or smoking. After coughing, sneezing, or blowing your nose. Anytime hands come into contact with bodily fluids, including cuts and burns. These aren't the only hand washing times. Knowing when to wash requires common sense on your part. Germs, such as bacteria and viruses, can grow easily, so think of your hands and fingernails as always contaminated. Just because they look clean does not mean they are clean. To properly wash your hands, you must dampen your hands with warm running water and apply soap. Then rub your hands together, scrubbing hands and arms for a minimum of 10 to 15 seconds. You must also use a nail brush to clean thoroughly under your fingernails. Scrubbing your nails is necessary for your hands to be clean. Then rinse your hands completely under warm running water. Dry your hands thoroughly with a single-use towel or an air dryer. Do not use a shared towel. Use a clean paper towel to open the door if needed. Do not touch the door handle or you may recontaminate your hands. Finally, do not use hand lotion. It may allow bacteria to grow. One thing to note is that if the water is not hot or hand washing supplies are not available, tell your supervisor immediately. Another thing to remember is that plastic gloves can also spread germs. Wash your hands before putting on gloves and change gloves between tasks. Remember to always wash your hands. Gloves and sanitizers do not replace hand washing. Wash hands and arms first before putting on gloves. Wash hands and arms first before applying hand sanitizer. When gloves are damaged or when you change tasks, take off your old gloves, wash your hands and arms, and put on fresh gloves. You must also remember your apron is not a towel. Do not wipe your hands on it. In addition, if you touch your apron, you must properly wash your hands after. You must change to a fresh apron if your apron gets dirty and before leaving the kitchen or food preparation area. Bare hand contact. Infected food employees are the source of contamination in more than 2/3 of the foodborne disease outbreaks reported in the United States with a bacterial or viral cause. Most of these outbreaks involve fecal oral agents that infected employees were shedding at the time the food was prepared. The organisms were spread to the food because of poor or non-existent hand washing procedures. In addition, infected cuts, burns, or boils on hands can result in contamination of food. Food regulations have traditionally required two methods of preventing the spread of foodborne disease by the fecal-oral mode of transmission. The first method is the prohibition of food workers from preparing food when they are infectious. The second method is requiring thorough and frequent hand washing. As a final barrier, bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food should be minimized, and suitable utensils such as spatulas, tongs, deli papers, or single-use gloves should be used. Any alternative to this requirement must address how food workers will be managed to prevent food contamination and how management will ensure that food employees thoroughly and frequently wash hands. There are times when food employees may contact exposed, ready-to-eat food with their bare hands if the establishment does not serve a highly susceptible population, such as the elderly, the very young, or people with susceptible immune systems, and the following requirements are met. First, food workers acknowledge receiving training on proper hand washing, when to wash, where to wash, proper fingernail maintenance, risks of bare hand contact, good hygienic practices, employee health policies, jewelry prohibition, double hand washing, nail brushing, hand antiseptic after washing, incentive programs, as well as other methods approved by the regulatory authority. In order to comply with this requirement, signed employee statements must be kept at the food establishment. Second, food workers must use 2 or more control measures, such as double hand washing, nail brushing, hand antiseptic after washing, incentive programs, or other methods approved by the regulatory authority. In order to comply with this requirement, a written plan must be kept at the food establishment. Thirdly, there must be documentation of any corrective actions taken. In order to comply with this requirement, there must be written records of who, what, when, where, and how corrections are made. And most importantly, in order for bare hand contact with prepared food, employees must practice proper hand washing and nail brushing. Personal grooming. Personal grooming is an important part in keeping a clean work environment. A few things to remember about personal grooming are: bathe every day, especially work days. Wear clean clothes to work daily, and clean means first time worn since washing. Keep hair clean and under control. Use a hair restraint if necessary. Keep fingernails clean and short. Do not wear nail polish or false fingernails, which may contaminate food. Do not wear jewelry. It may hold contaminants that could come into contact with food or cause injury if they get caught in equipment. Do not use cosmetics or perfumes or colognes around food, as they may contaminate food. Change clothes if they become contaminated. Personal behaviors. There are a few personal behaviors food workers must comply with in order to maintain a clean work environment. For example, food service personnel, while on duty, must refrain from eating, drinking, or smoking in any of the food preparation or storage areas. Smoke, eat, and drink only in designated areas. If you use tobacco, do not smoke or chew it while you are working or when you are near food or dishwashing areas. Smoke only while you're on a break. Do not eat or chew gum or tobacco on duty. Use only the assigned break areas. And be sure that if you do smoke, you wash your hands thoroughly before you return to work. Every once in a while you'll need to cough or sneeze. Be sure and cover your nose and mouth with a tissue or your hand, or turn your face to your shoulder or the crook of your elbow. Of course, double wash your hands immediately after. Most establishments, as well as health departments, discourage having any food or drink in the preparation area. For safety's sake, it's best to keep food or drink limited to designated break areas. One exception to the rule is for those employees working in an area where there is excessive heat, such as the grill area. If your employee permits drinking in this area, drink liquid in a way that would not contaminate food, utensils, or any service items, such as a container with a lid and a straw. On the cook line, use a container with a lid, straw, and handle. In some areas, the health department requires that the beverage containers have a lid and a handle but no straw. Just be sure and check with your local health department to learn what is permitted. Finally, do not sit or lean on countertops, tables, equipment, or other surfaces where food is prepared and served. Restricted areas. There are certain restrictions when it comes to animals in restaurants. First, employees may not handle animals while on duty, except for fish or shellfish in display tanks, and if they do, they must properly wash their hands afterwards. Animals are not permitted on the restaurant premises with the exception of support animals for the disabled or police patrol dogs when necessary for work purposes. This exception also applies to food service employees who require the use of a support animal. On a different note, only employees who are on duty and assigned to the operation of the kitchen are allowed in the food preparation, storage, or dishwashing areas. This includes delivery drivers, repair persons, and pesticide applicators. It is the manager's responsibility to exclude visitors from entering the kitchen, except in cases where a supervised brief visit or tour is given. Children are not allowed in food preparation, storage, or dishwashing areas. Small hands carry germs, and busy kitchens can be dangerous.
Chapter 3. In this section, you will learn the importance of inspecting foods before accepting delivery, what to look for when inspecting food deliveries. When a restaurant receives a food delivery, there are several requirements that must be met. In order for food to remain safe, it has to arrive safe. The receiving station is your first, last, and only chance to catch unsafe foods before it ends up in your kitchen. Before accepting delivery, look at the storage area of the delivery truck. Is it clean? Reject products past their expiration date or will be past their expiration date before they can be used. Look for signs of spoilage, which will be described later in this section. Look for signs of physical contamination, foreign objects accidentally introduced into the food. Watch for damaged or already opened containers. Measure food temperatures and reject foods that are not at their appropriate temperature. Besides the risk of foodborne illness, accepting unsafe foods is costly to your employer, who will be stuck paying for something that has to be thrown out. Another thing to look out for are signs that the food has been out of temperature earlier. For example, large ice crystals are a sign of frozen food that's been thawed and then refrozen. In order to keep delivered foods safe, it is important to maintain a clean, uncluttered, brightly lighted delivery station. Move delivered foods immediately to proper storage. Don't let them sit in the temperature danger zone, 41 degrees to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Tell your supervisor if you feel too rushed to make an adequate inspection. Another important way to keep food safe and obey the law is only use food that comes from sources approved by the health department. Look for USDA on meats. Look for pasteurized on milk. Look for certification tags on packages of shellfish and safe for 90 days. Canned foods, fresh foods, egg and dairy products must come from companies, brokers, or dairies that have been licensed and inspected. Ready-to-eat foods need to be inspected, just as fresh foods would. Ready-to-eat food refers to any food that is edible without further washing or cooking. Ready-to-eat food includes washed, whole, or cut fruit and vegetables, deli meats, and bakery items. Sugars, spices, and properly cooked food items are also considered ready to eat. A few more tips to keep in mind when trying to keep food safe are: store each food at its proper temperature. If you take it out to use it, return it promptly to its correct place. Store food in clean wrappers or securely closed containers. Do not store foods on the floor or against walls. Avoid overloading shelves. In the refrigerator, store raw foods below ready-to-eat foods. In fact, keep them as far apart as possible. Arrange food so that the product that came in first is used first, also known as FIFO, first in, first out. In dry storage, keep products away from sunlight, pipes, and refrigeration lines. Keep storage areas, racks, trays, and carts clean and dry. Onions and other strong odor foods should be kept away from eggs and dairy products. Liquid eggs should always be refrigerated. Refrigerate dry goods once they are mixed with liquids. Refrigerators are required to be kept at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, keeping food safe by slowing the growth of bacteria. Inspecting meats. Accept beef, bright red in color. Temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Firm texture springs back to the touch. Reject beef with bad color, brown or green looking, purple blotches, green, white, or black spots. Bad texture, sticky, slimy, or dry. Objectionable odor. Damaged or dirty packaging. Pork. Accept pork pink and lean in color. White fat. Temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Firm texture springs back to the touch. Reject pork with bad color, brown or green looking, purple blotches, green, white, or black spots. Bad texture, sticky, slimy, or dry. Objectionable odor. damaged or dirty packaging. Lamb. Accept lamb light red in color, temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Firm texture springs back to the touch. Reject lamb with bad color, brown or green looking, purple blotches, green, white, or black spots. Bad texture, sticky, slimy, or dry. Objectionable odor. Damaged or dirty packaging. Poultry. Accept poultry, temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Fresh, even coloration. Firm, springy texture. Reject poultry with purple or green color. Greenish discoloration at the neck. Dark wingtips. Soft texture, stickiness under wings and joints. Objectionable odor. Damaged or dirty packaging. Inspecting produce. Fresh fruits and vegetables should not show mold, spoilage, or insects. To prevent bruising or contamination, avoid squeezing or handling whenever possible. What to check for when inspecting dairy. That the temperature is 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, always checked by a thermometer. Always within expiration date. And that the packaging is clean and undamaged. Milk products. Milk. Make sure it is pasteurized, grade A milk. Cheese. Be sure the rind wax wrapping is clean and intact, and also acceptable flavor and texture. Butter. Be sure there's no objectionable odor, and any sign of mold or dirt is absent. Egg products. Shell eggs. Check to make sure eggs are delivered refrigerated. Immediately placed in refrigerated equipment that maintains food at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or less. That shells are clean, unbroken, free of cracks or checks. And that they are grade AA or A eggs, and cartons display the USDA logo. Make sure liquid eggs are a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, within expiration date, and that the packaging is intact. Frozen eggs should be kept at a temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, are within expiration date, and the packaging is intact. Dry eggs should be within expiration date with the packaging intact. Inspecting seafood. Fish. Accept fish with a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, packed in self-draining ice, with fresh odor that is not fishy, with clear, bright eyes, and firm textured flesh that's springy to the touch. Reject fish, which gills are dry and gray or grayish green, cloudy sunken eyes or red bordered eyes, soft flesh that does not spring back when touched, objectionable ammonia-like odor. Crustaceans. Accept crustaceans with a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower for live product, or 0 degrees Fahrenheit for frozen, alive at delivery. Hard, heavy shell on lobsters. And accept crustaceans with fresh odor. Reject crustaceans whose shells are soft and strong objectionable odor. Shellfish. Accept shellfish with a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower for live product, or 0 degrees Fahrenheit for frozen. Shells that are tightly closed, and the product is alive, with fresh odor, and shipped with shell stock tag containing delivery information. Reject shells that are open and will not close when tapped, a sign that the clam or oyster is dead, and with strong objectionable odor. Frozen foods. Accept frozen foods with a temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below, ice cream 6 degrees to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Reject frozen foods with cartons that are distorted, misshapen, or damaged, with product surrounded by large ice crystals, with cartons containing fluid or frozen liquid. Modified atmosphere packaged foods. Accept modified atmosphere packaged foods with correct temperature as listed on the package. Reject with flawed or damaged packaging, or product beyond expiration date. Canned foods. Reject canned foods with missing labels or rust, swelled tops or bottoms, leaks, dents or flaws, especially on seams. Vacuum-sealed foods. Accept vacuum-sealed foods with correct temperature as listed on the package. Reject vacuum-sealed foods with flawed or damaged packaging, or product that is beyond expiration date. Dry goods. Reject dry goods with torn, damp, or damaged packaging or insect-infested product.
Chapter 4. In this chapter you will learn how to keep from cross-contaminating foods, how to cook foods safely, the safe way to thaw frozen foods and chill hot foods, how to keep foods at the right temperature, hot or cold, the importance of maintaining proper food temperature to control illness-causing germs, respect for the temperature danger zone, the different kinds of thermometers, how to measure temperature and how often, the right way and the wrong way to handle place settings and utensils, working in the danger zone. There's no way to avoid it. All food, in order to be prepared, cooked, and served, must enter that temperature range between 41 degrees and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, where illness-causing bacteria can grow. As said before, this temperature range is known as the danger zone. The time limit for food in the danger zone is 4 hours. After 4 hours, the food must be thrown out. As a food handler, your job is to practice safe food handling, monitor the time spent in the danger zone, prevent cross-contamination from other sources, minimize the time food must spend in the danger zone, start with utensils and surfaces that have been cleaned and sanitized, and when you're done using them, clean and sanitize them again. Prepare foods in small amounts, called batch cooking. This is only as much as you can use in 4 hours or less. Measure and record food temperatures continually. Prepare food as close as you can to the time it's served, and if you're working ahead, store it properly. Use utensils to avoid touching raw food whenever possible. Wash your hands after each task, especially when you've been working with raw meat of any kind, taking out the garbage, cleaning, etc. After food has been prepared for service, avoid touching it. Again, the time limit for food in the danger zone is 4 hours. After that, throw it out. Thawing food safely. There are a few different methods when it comes to thawing frozen foods. First is the cooking method. The cooking method only works with small foods, such as meat patties or seafood. The food must be small enough to go straight into cooking while still frozen. Other foods have to be thawed. The second method is the slow thawing method. For this method, place the tightly wrapped frozen item, such as a roast, on the lowest rack of the refrigerator. You have to leave room around it for the air to circulate. Depending on the size, slow thawing may take up to 3 days. The third method is the microwave thawing method. Thaw food in the microwave oven, only if it will then be cooked immediately. The fourth method is the quick thawing method. In a food prep sink, place the food in a large enough container and fill it with cold running water for no more than 2 hours. Afterward, clean and sanitize the container, sink, and anything else the thawing water may have touched. One important thing to remember is never thaw foods on the counter at room temperature, because that would be the danger zone. Food safety, a matter of degrees. 3 of the most important jobs in any kitchen are maintaining food temperature, measuring food temperature, and recording food temperature. These are not just the cook's job, they're everyone's. Thermometers are used constantly in restaurants to measure whether foods at delivery are acceptable. Internal temperatures during cooking, especially meats. Reheating, cooling, foods in hot and cold holding. Food handlers must keep track of how long food stays in the danger zone, which is between 41 degrees and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures should be monitored on a constant basis. Always check with your certified professional food manager for intervals and proper procedures. If prepared or perishable food stays in the danger zone for longer than 4 hours, throw it out. That goes for meats, vegetables, eggs, dairy, beans and rice, or food containing these ingredients. Cooking or reheating foods that have been in the danger zone for more than 4 hours will not make them safe again. The right tool for the job. There are various types of thermometers. These are some of the types you will most likely be using. There is the bimetallic stemmed thermometer. This is a probe thermometer that is used to measure internal temperatures of food. Insert the lower third of its pointed metal stem into the food and read the circular gauge at the top. This thermometer should never be left in food that is cooking in an oven, microwave, or on a stove. Also note that bimetallic stemmed thermometers are slower than probe-type thermometers and report an average temperature range instead of a more accurate temperature reported at the tip. Therefore, health inspectors generally push for probe-type thermometer usage. To calibrate a bimetallic stemmed thermometer, Place the measuring tip in a clean container of half ice, half slushy water, making sure that the tip doesn't touch the bottom or edge of the container. 30 seconds after the gauge needle stops moving, turn the calibration nut, located just below the gauge, until the needle reads 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This method also works for thermocouples and digital thermometers as well. If they require adjustment, try replacing the battery. If that doesn't work, send it to an authorized repair service. Then there is the thermocouple. This thermometer measures temperature electronically by inserting its probe into the food and reading its digital display. Probe thermometers must be small-tipped. There is also the time temperature indicator. It looks like a label on a food package. This thermometer contains liquid crystals that change color if it reaches an unsafe temperature, indicating whether the food has been in the danger zone. There is also the digital thermometer, which measures temperatures by inserting the pointed metal tip into the food and reading the digital display on the handle. There are also food-specific thermometers. You would use this device to measure just one type of food, such as meat, deep-fried foods, or candy, and no other. Another type are equipment thermometers. These thermometers measure temperatures in ovens, refrigeration equipment, holding carts, and other cooking, storage, or serving equipment. Place refrigerator thermometers in a place where they are easy to read. One thing to remember is never use a mercury-based thermometer or a glass thermometer to measure foods. They could break and contaminate what you're measuring. The state recommends daily calibration of thermometers, especially probe thermometers if they've been bumped or dropped, to make sure you're getting an accurate reading. And they must be cleaned and sanitized after each use. Before and after each use, thermometers must be washed, rinsed, and air-dried. Use a food-safe sanitizing solution on the contact areas before putting the thermometer away. Probe thermometers are used to measure the internal temperature of food. For all measurements, let the needle or readout stabilize about 15 seconds before recording the temperature. Avoid touching the sensor probe against the container sides or bottom, which may be warmer than the food and give a false reading. Use these methods to get an accurate temperature from different foods. Foods while cooking, insert the sensor device into the center of the food, the thickest part of the roast, for example, or the middle of a stovetop pot. Take a measurement in at least 2 places. Make sure the stem of the thermometer doesn't touch bone, which can give the wrong temperature. Small liquid containers. Open one container, a half pint of cream say, in the batch, and insert your thermometer. If the contents of that container can't be used immediately, throw it away. Soft, flexible bulk containers. Fold the container back on itself with the thermometer nestled in the fold, taking care not to penetrate the material. Frozen packages. Stack 2 frozen packages with the thermometer placed in between. Your kitchen maintains a temperature logging system for tracking foods in the danger zone. Use it to record the temperature of food, the time that temperature was taken. Anything unusual, for instance, if chilled foods rise to above 41 degrees Fahrenheit. After logging it, inform your manager promptly. Proper cooking is especially important for meats, which often naturally contain microorganisms that can cause illness. Poultry especially is never served undercooked. Follow these guidelines to kill illness-causing germs, adding 25 degrees Fahrenheit if you're cooking in a microwave. The following times and temperatures reflect what the internal temperature must reach for that specified minimum time in order to properly kill bacteria in those foods. Beef roasts. 145 degrees for 3 minutes. 140 degrees for 12 minutes. 130 degrees for 121 minutes. Pork, game, minced meat and fish, and eggs in large batches. 155 degrees for 15 seconds. 150 degrees for 1 minute. 145 degrees for 3 minutes. Ground meats, non-poultry, and casseroles with meat. 155 degrees for 15 seconds. Lamb, mutton, veal, fish, seafood, cubed or sliced beef, eggs served promptly, and steaks. 145 degrees for 15 seconds. Poultry, stuffed meats, and stuffed pastas. 165 degrees for 15 seconds. Food sometimes is served or stored in hot holding or cold holding stations, equipment that is designed to control temperature. When working with these holding stations, bring food to the holding station in a covered container. Use long-handled utensils instead of your hands to stir or move food. Utensils should be kept in the food, handle pointing away from the food, when not in use, or else placed in a container with drinkable running water. Keep containers covered whenever possible. Stir the food frequently to maintain even temperature and to avoid hot or cold spots. Measure food temperatures by looking at the thermometer placed in the food, not just by reading the holding station's thermostat. One thing to remember is do not mix new food with old. Instead, remove the container holding the old food and replace it with the container holding the new food. For cold holding, do not let food stand at room temperature because that will allow germs to grow. Store foods in a refrigerator, refrigerated display case, in ice, or other approved methods. Always hold cold foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Fish, shellfish, poultry, milk, and red meat will stay longer if you cold hold them at or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Use the metal stem thermometer to check the food in cold holding. For example, in salad bars, areas where you prepare food, and in coolers. If you use ice to keep food cold on a salad bar or food display, be sure that the ice comes up to the level of the food that is in the pan or the dish. Food must be colder than 41 degrees Fahrenheit when you put it in the ice. Cold food is held at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower to keep germs from growing. It should be measured for temperature using a probe thermometer at least every 4 hours. Ice surrounding food should be level with the food to maintain the correct cold temperature. Make sure that the holding unit's lighting is far enough away from the food to keep it from heating it. For holding hot food, preheat hot holding stations, steam tables, soup warmers, crock pots, and other heated surfaces before placing food. Hot food is kept at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher and should be measured for temperature in more than one place using a metal stemmed thermometer at least every 2 hours to make sure it stays at the correct temperature throughout your shift. After placing food on a steam table, stir regularly to avoid cold spots. Again, do not mix new food with old food, and also do not mix raw food with cooked food. Hot food that can't be served within 4 hours should be cooled and placed in refrigerated storage. State law requires that foods be chilled from 135 degrees Fahrenheit to 70 degrees Fahrenheit within 2 hours, and then dropped from 70 degrees Fahrenheit to 41 degrees Fahrenheit within 4 hours. In other words, hot foods must pass through the danger zone within a total of 6 hours. If food does not cool to 41 degrees Fahrenheit within 6 hours, don't save it, throw it out. Foods that cool properly and are ready for refrigeration should be labeled listing the contents as well as the date and time prepared. To speed up the cooling process, cut it up. Cut foods such as meats into smaller portions no larger than 4 pounds and then place in the refrigerator. Use shallow pans. Pour foods into pre-chilled pans to a depth of 1 inch for soft, thick foods such as sauces and stews, and 3 inches for thin or liquid foods. Place the pans in the top rack of the refrigerator, stirring regularly until chilled to 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, and then cover. Use ice water baths. Chill pots of hot food such as soup by placing the pot in a large container and surrounding the pot with ice. Stir the food frequently so that it chills evenly to 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. Use a blast chiller. Place the pan of food in the blast chiller if your workplace has one. Once food has cooled, move it to a larger, covered storage container. An important thing to remember is never place a large pot of hot food in the refrigerator. It will raise the temperature inside the fridge into the danger zone, and the food in the pot will not cool quickly enough, allowing large amounts of bacteria to grow. Food that is cooked and then cooled may need to be heated again. When you must reheat food, do it very quickly, within 1 hour, to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. The right way to do this is on the stove burners, or in microwave ovens, convection ovens, or double boilers. Do not use anything that will heat the food slowly, because it takes too long to pass through the danger zone. Stir the food to be sure that all parts of it are hot. Then use your metal stem thermometer to check the temperature. Reheat foods to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Reheat food only once, using the stovetop, grill, or oven. Never the hot holding equipment, which cannot reheat food effectively enough to kill microorganisms. The reheated food should reach a temperature of at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit for a minimum of at least 15 seconds. Do not mix reheated food with fresh food. If food cannot be reheated within 2 hours, throw it out. Check the temperature of reheated food with a metal stem thermometer before serving. Self-service areas. Self-service areas are areas such as salad bars and condiment bars. There are special considerations that must be taken into account with self-service areas. To avoid cross-contamination, take used plates from customers coming back for seconds and give them clean plates instead. The only items that can be reused in a self-serve situation would be beverage cups. Make sure that food guards are in place to protect food from sneezing or coughing. Immediately replace utensils that have been dropped, touched, or coughed on, and replace any food that has come into contact with those utensils. Again, monitor temperatures of foods in hot or cold holding. One important thing to remember when handling tableware is to avoid cross-contamination in the dining area. Avoid touching anything that will come into contact with the customer's mouth. Be sure to hold cups by the bottom or the handle, not the rim. Hold plates underneath or on the edges, not with fingers extending onto the rim. Hold utensils by the handle, not the eating end. Use a non-breakable utensil with a handle, not a cup or bowl, to scoop ice for water glasses. Use tongs to serve finger foods such as breads. Remember, do not reuse breads, sauces, and other unwrapped or prepared foods that have been served to customers. Single-service items are items meant to be thrown away after one use. They include styrofoam cups and plastic utensils that should be stored unopened off the floor. Wash your hands before unwrapping them and avoid touching surfaces that will come into contact with a customer's mouth.
Chapter 5. In this chapter, you will learn the difference between cleaning and sanitizing, when to clean and/or sanitize, your cleaning and sanitizing tools, how to clean surfaces and equipment, and the correct way to handle spills. It takes more than soap and water to keep a food business clean and safe. It also takes chemicals and care to use them the right way. You want to be safe, and you want to get the job done in a safe way for your customers. Some of the chemicals you will need are detergents, sanitizers, and pesticides. These help stop germs and germ-spreading bugs dead in their tracks. Cleaning removes visible dirt, debris, stains, spills, and other impurities from a surface. Use hot water, detergent, scrubbing wiping implements, and clean water for rinsing. Sanitizing is the process of reducing the number of microorganisms by using heat or chemicals on a clean surface. Dishes and equipment are sanitized to reduce bacteria to safe levels. Cleaning and sanitizing must be a two-step process. Surfaces must first be cleaned and rinsed before being sanitized. Sanitizing kills the microorganisms on a surface, either with very hot water or a chemical solution. The three-sink process. Manual cleaning and sanitizing uses a three-basin sink as follows. Sink number 1. After scraping and pre-rinsing dishes and utensils, wash them in the first sink containing hot water and detergent. Sink number 2. Rinse the clean dishes under clean, hot running water. Sink number 3. Sanitize the dishes using a chemical solution of 1 teaspoon bleach to 1 gallon of water. Check solution strength by using a test strip. Or dip dishes into 170 degrees Fahrenheit water for at least 30 seconds. Set the items in a strainer to air dry. Do not use a towel for drying. Remember, before you can sanitize, you must always first wash and rinse. Using the dishwasher process. A commercial dishwasher brings water to sanitizing temperature. Place rinsed, scraped, and pre-soaked dishes and utensils in the racks so that all sides will be cleaned. Run the machine according to manufacturer's directions. Allow dishes to air dry. A good practice to follow is if utensils and surfaces such as knives and cutting boards come into contact with raw poultry, they should go through the dishwasher. It is always important for the safety of yourself and the customer to clean your equipment regularly. For non-electric equipment and utensils, scrub, rinse, and sanitize cutting boards, knives, and other utensils after each task to avoid cross-contamination. And be sure to wash, rinse with clear, clean water, then sanitize slicers and food processors after each task as well. For electric-powered equipment and utensils, be sure to unplug the equipment first. Wash equipment surfaces with soapy water, rinse with clean, clear water, then sanitize with a chemical bleach solution. Take out removable parts, cleaning and sanitizing each one before setting aside to air dry. After cleaning, be sure to reassemble the equipment, washing and sanitizing surfaces you touch. When cleaning, be sure to use separate wiping cloths for cleaning surfaces that come into contact with food, such as cloths used for equipment, prep tables, and cutting boards, and surfaces that do not come into contact with food, such as cloths used for floors, walls, and countertops. Each type of wiping cloth is stored in its own separate bucket containing sanitizing solution. Wiping cloths that are in use should be stored in a sanitizer solution of bleach 50 to 100 parts per million and quaternary ammonia 200 to 300 parts per million between uses. Always use a fresh or sanitized cloth for each cleanup task. Using sanitizing solutions involves the task of mixing chemicals. Therefore, there must be tests in place to make sure the mixture is correct. That is why you should use special test strips to measure the strength of your sanitizing solution. For bleach or chlorine solutions, the test strip should turn blue. That indicates a 50 to 100 parts per million concentration, which is ideal for proper strength to kill germs. Less than 50 parts per million is too weak. More than 100 parts per million is too strong and could make people sick. Remember that sanitizing solutions will not adequately kill germs when they are dirty, even if they smell strong. Mix up fresh solution and then test it for strength. Cleaning up spills. Spills on the floor are a workplace hazard that must be cleaned up immediately. The first thing you must do is advise coworkers to prevent anyone from accidentally walking through the spill. Next, use a bucket and mop to apply the correct cleaning solution, following the directions for proper use, and sop up any remaining moisture. After that, post warning signs or cones to divert floor traffic until the cleanup site is dry. Finally, put cleaning supplies away properly and wash hands before returning to work. Chemical storage. Since chemicals can be harmful if ingested, cleansers and other non-food items are always stored separately from foods. Separate shelves, separate cupboards, sometimes even separate rooms. Chemicals are never stored in food containers, nor are foods to be stored in chemical containers. Chemicals should be kept in their own original packaging or in other break-resistant, clearly labeled containers. When using chemicals, follow the handling instructions contained in Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDSs, which should be available in your workplace. Chemicals should be kept away from food handling areas. If chemicals come into contact with food, throw the food away. Store chemicals below and away from food and utensils. The farther, the better. Clean up all chemical spills immediately, then wash your hands and, if needed, change into fresh clothes. Garbage storage. First, make sure that your garbage container is sturdy and leak-proof and has a tight-fitting lid, and be sure to use a leak-proof bag. This will save you a lot of hassle in the future. Your work area should be designed in such a way that allows you to keep the place clean and work hygienically. In addition to clean storage of waste, one thing to keep in mind is to make sure the doors and external windows are secure enough to keep out the pests such as flies and rats. Always be sure to empty the garbage regularly and arrange for it to be removed regularly. And be sure to never let it pile up, especially around food areas. Be sure to clean and sanitize garbage containers frequently to minimize odors and to keep from attracting bugs and pests. And be sure that after any garbage duty, you wash your hands thoroughly. Breakdowns, outages, and facility emergencies. If the refrigeration goes out, measure food temperatures with a metal stem thermometer. If they are 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, move foods immediately to another fridge, if available. If not, keep its door shut. When the power comes back on, measure it again. If foods have moved into the danger zone, throw them out. If the stove or oven stops working, use approved methods to cool food that was cooking and refrigerate it. If cooked food in a defective hot holding station falls below 135 degrees Fahrenheit, throw it out. If the hot water is off, no hot water equals no sanitation. Stop food service immediately. If any other major service interruptions occur, such as water, sewer, power, heating, the best course of action is to close the restaurant until these essential services are restored.
Chapter 6. In this chapter you will learn injuries on the job, when to work and when not to work, about foodborne diseases, how to handle cuts and burns, how to lift things properly to avoid injuries, what to do in case of choking. Sick call. If you become sick, it's your responsibility to report to the person in charge of information about your health and activities as they relate to diseases that are transmitted through food. Contact your supervisor to call in sick if you have fever or chills, vomiting or nausea, diarrhea, jaundice, heavy coughing and sneezing or runny nose, sore throat with fever, eye discharge, an infected cut or burn, open wounds or boils. Working when sick exposes customers to foodborne illnesses, and it exposes everyone, including coworkers, if your condition is contagious. Remember, if your supervisor clears you for work, but you're taking medication, store it in your locker or in another safe place away from food. Foodborne disease. Foodborne diseases have a major impact on public health. The food employee is required to report to the manager an illness due to foodborne pathogens. It is the responsibility of the manager or the person in charge to report to the appropriate regulatory agency any person who applies for or works in the food service capacity suspected or reported to have foodborne illness. The following are the big 5 of the more common and serious foodborne pathogens: Salmonella typhi, Shigella, E. coli 0157H7, hepatitis A virus, norovirus. To protect against the transmission of these serious foodborne illnesses to the customers or fellow workers, you must be excluded until cleared by a physician to return to food service work. Foodborne diseases. Salmonella typhi, salmonellosis. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, diarrhea, fever, and a headache. These symptoms, along with the loss of appetite, can persist for several days. Symptoms begin 6 to 48 hours after eating contaminated food. Symptoms may persist for 1 to 2 days longer, depending on the individual. Salmonella bacteria is commonly found in raw meats, raw and undercooked poultry, and eggs, and in unpasteurized milk and dairy products. Salmonella is also found in the feces of animals and people who are infected with the disease. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with salmonella may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. Salmonella is not spread by coughing or sneezing. People of all ages may be affected by salmonella bacteria, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. Salmonella is a heat-resistant bacteria, making proper cooking temperatures and times very important. Salmonella is killed by thoroughly cooking foods. Food handlers must use clean equipment and properly sanitize work surfaces between tasks to avoid cross-contamination. Always use good hygienic practices, washing hands after going to the restroom, before preparing food. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Shigella, shigellosis. Symptoms include bloody diarrhea, fever, nausea, vomiting, and cramps. Those who are infected with the Shigella organism will begin to feel symptoms about 12 to 50 hours after the contaminated food is ingested. Associated foods. Salads, i.e. tuna, macaroni, potato, and chicken. Raw vegetables, milk and milk products, and poultry. Contamination usually occurs via the fecal hand-oral route, transmitted by unsanitary food handlers. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with Shigella may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. People of all ages may be affected by Shigella bacteria, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. Shigella is transmitted from an unsanitary food handler through ready-to-eat foods. Excellent personal hygiene and proper hand washing after using the restroom will control transmission of this disease. Avoid cross-contamination, cook foods thoroughly, and store foods at the proper temperatures. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. E. coli. E. coli attacks the lining of the intestines, causing severe cramping and abdominal pain, watery diarrhea, occasional vomiting, and low-grade fever. The illness usually lasts for an average of 8 days. Some people, most often young children, may develop hemolytic uremic syndrome, HUS, which can lead to kidney failure. Undercooked or raw hamburger meat is the most common vehicle for this disease. Other foods have also been associated with E. coli outbreak, such as unpasteurized milk and apple juice, some fresh fruits, alfalfa, and radish sprouts. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with E. coli may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. All people are susceptible to this disease, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. E. coli infection can be prevented by proper handling and thorough cooking of beef and beef products to a minimum of 155 degrees Fahrenheit. Monitor grill temperatures with a probe thermometer to ensure temperature requirements are met. Serve consumers only pasteurized milk and apple juice. Wash your hands after using the restroom and do not prepare food until the illness is resolved. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Hepatitis A virus. People infected with the hepatitis A virus will usually feel symptoms of fever, nausea, and abdominal pain. These symptoms are followed by jaundice. People infected with the hepatitis A virus may pass this disease along to the consumer via fecal-oral transmission from an unsanitary food handler to an unsuspecting customer. Foods most often implicated with this virus are cold cuts, salads, fruits and juices, milk and other dairy products, shellfish, and iced drinks. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with hepatitis A virus may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. This disease is more common in adults than in children. However, everyone who ingests this virus and whose immune system is unable to fight it off is susceptible to an infection. The hepatitis A virus is transmitted from an unsanitary food handler through ready-to-eat foods. The virus can be passed to others when the ill person does not wash his or her hands well after using the restroom and prepares food. Excellent personal hygiene and proper hand washing is very important to control the spread of this illness. Avoid eating raw shellfish. Sharing drinks, kissing, hugging, or casual contact does not spread hepatitis A. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Norovirus. Symptoms. Noroviruses are members of a group of viruses called caliciviruses, also previously known as Norwalk-like viruses. Norovirus is also called viral gastroenteritis, food poisoning, or calicivirus. Norovirus infection causes gastroenteritis, which is an inflammation of the stomach and the small and large intestines. Noroviruses are by far the leading cause of foodborne illness outbreaks. This infection is often mistakenly referred to as the stomach flu. It is not related to the flu, influenza, which is a respiratory illness caused by influenza virus. Norovirus is not a new virus, but interest in it is growing as more is learned about how frequently noroviruses cause illness in people. Common symptoms include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps. Other symptoms may include fever and chills, headaches, and muscle aches. Symptoms usually last 1 or 2 days. However, during that brief period, people can feel very ill and vomit, often violently and without any warning, many times a day. Noroviruses are found in the stool or vomit of infected people. People can become infected with the virus in several ways, including eating food or drinking liquids that are contaminated with norovirus by food handlers who have not washed their hands adequately, touching surfaces or objects contaminated with norovirus and then placing their hand in their mouth or eating before washing their hands, having direct contact with another person who is infected and showing symptoms. Persons working in a daycare center or nursing home should pay special attention to children or residents who have norovirus illness. This virus is very contagious and can spread rapidly throughout such environments. Sometimes certain illnesses can cause food handlers to be excluded from an establishment. An employee who has been diagnosed with one of the big 5 foodborne illnesses by a physician must be excluded from the food establishment. They must go home, and the manager must contact the local health authority. Just remember, diagnosed equals excluded. Other times, certain illnesses cause a food handler to have restricted duties at an establishment. If an employee has symptoms of a foodborne illness, such as vomiting, diarrhea, or fever, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. If an employee has an infected sore on their hand or arm, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. If an employee has persistent discharge from their eyes, nose, or mouth, such as coughing, runny nose, or sneezing, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. Just remember, symptoms equal restricted. Burns. Burns may be caused by heat or chemicals and can be very severe. Immediately place the burned part of your body in cold water. Get to a doctor at once. Heat-caused burns are generally caused by hot oil from deep fryers, hot liquids and foods, steam. To prevent burns by hot oil from deep fryers, cool the oil to 100 degrees Fahrenheit before disposing of it. Do not use plastic containers to store oil unless it's completely cooled. The container may melt and dump hot oil on you and others. Do not drop food into hot oil. It can splash onto you, causing severe burns. Place food in hot oil using tongs or a frying basket. To prevent burns from hot liquids or foods, do not place just washed food in hot oil. The water droplets will cause the oil to sputter and explode and send hot drops into the air. These drops can cause severe burns and can cause a fire. Do not use the deep fryer to heat containers of food. Use dry hot pads or padded mitts when handling hot pots and pans which contain liquids or foods. Wet pads and mitts will get hot quickly and can cause burns. Wear the right clothing. Wear a shirt that covers your neck and arms down to your wrists. Wear closed-toe shoes, no canvas sneakers or sandals. Remove plastic gloves before handling hot pots and pans. These gloves can melt and stick to your skin, causing a severe burn. To prevent burns from steam, when removing the lid from a steam kettle, stand away from the pot. Stand to one side and turn your face away when removing pans from a steam table. The lid should be removed slowly so steam can escape from the back of the lid, and you can use the lid as a shield for your face. Never try to open a pressure cooker unless pressure is 0. Chemical burns are generally caused by sanitizers and cleaning compounds. To prevent chemical burns, use chemicals as directed on the label. If you're not sure of the instructions, be sure and ask your supervisor to explain them to you. Never mix chemicals. They can produce poisonous gases. Be sure that spray bottles for cleansers and sanitizers are plainly labeled and stored away from surfaces where food is prepared. Destroy used chemical containers so they do not get used by mistake for storing foods. Use plastic gloves when handling undiluted sanitizers and cleansers. Cuts. Cuts result from accidents with knives, power-driven equipment, broken glass, and other equipment with sharp edges. Knives. Dull blades can cause cuts because they're difficult to work with. More pressure must be used to cut with them. This can cause the knife to slip. Knives should be sharpened frequently. Use knives only for the special purpose for which they were meant. Knives have their own specialties. There are knives for chopping, peeling, deboning, filleting, scaling, carving, cutting, opening oysters, and many other special jobs. The correct knife for the job is the safest knife for the job. Store knives separately from other utensils. Never leave knives in the sink or in wash water. Someone might reach in and grab the knife unknowingly. Wear mesh gloves when cleaning knives and slicer blades. Power-driven cutting equipment such as slicers, mixers can cause serious cuts and result in the loss of fingers. Use clean, sanitized mesh gloves. It may be against the law in your state to operate power-driven cutting equipment if you're under the age of 18. Be sure and check with your supervisor on this point if you're under 18. Cutting equipment should be sharpened regularly. Do not remove guards and safety switches from cutting equipment. Glass. If dishes are to be washed by hand, do not put them all in the sink at once. This causes heavier dishes to crush lighter ones and can lead to cuts. Do not stack glasses and cups inside each other. They can get stuck, and you can cut yourself as you try to separate them. Never use a glass or dish to scoop ice or ice cream. They can chip into the food as well as cut your hand. Use a separate and clearly marked garbage container for broken glass and dishes. Floors that are greasy or wet or have floor mats that are not well tacked down are the main cause of slips, trips, and falls. Mats should be well tacked down and have tapered edges. Keep floors clean and dry. Don't hurry while carrying heavy loads. Wear shoes with non-slip soles. Be sure to use a good stepladder to reach supplies that are stored above your head. Sprains and strains. Most sprains and strains are caused by lifting things in a way that puts strains and stresses on your body. This can result in damage to muscles, bones, and ligaments. Some damage can be permanent. Heavy items should never be stored any higher than waist level. Keep your back straight and use your legs for power when lifting. Be sure your footing is solid before you lift. Be sure the load is as close to your body as possible when lifting. Don't reach out and lift. Avoid loose, flapping clothing when lifting. It can catch on an object and throw you off balance. Be sure that your shoelaces are tied. Be sure to check the load you are about to lift. Are the handles secure? Is the load balanced? Is the load slippery? Are there sharp edges or protruding nails? Are there loose things in the load that will shift while you're lifting it? If the load is too heavy, get someone to help you. Choking. Step 1. If you think someone is choking, ask, "Are you choking?" Shout help. Step 2. Call for help if victim cannot cough or speak or breathe, is coughing weakly, or is making high-pitched noises. Step 3. Send someone to call an ambulance. Step 4. Do abdominal thrusts. Wrap your arms around the victim's waist. Make a fist. Do not bear hug. Your arms should be held away from the victim. Place thumb side of fist on middle of victim's abdomen, just above the navel and well below the lower tip of the breastbone. Grasp fist with your other hand. Press fist into abdomen with a quick upward thrust. Repeat abdominal thrusts until object is coughed up or victim starts to breathe or cough. If victim becomes unconscious, lower victim to the floor. Step 5. Do a finger sweep. Grasp tongue and lower jaw and lift jaw. Slide finger down the inside of cheek and the base of tongue. Sweep object out. Step 6. Open airway. Tilt head back and lift chin. Give 2 full breaths. Keep head tilted back. Pinch nose shut. Seal your lips tight around the victim's mouth. Give 2 full breaths for 1 to 1.5 seconds each. Step 7. Give 6 to 10 abdominal thrusts if air won't go in. Place heel of one hand against middle of victim's abdomen. Place other hand on top of first hand. Press into abdomen with quick upward thrusts. Step 8. Repeat steps 5, 6, 7, and 8 until airway is cleared or ambulance arrives. Treating injuries. If you find yourself having to deal with an injury, inform your supervisor immediately. If an infection has occurred, you may be reassigned to a job that doesn't involve food handling, for example, working with money. You can tell when an injury is infected because it will become inflamed, red around the wound, or have pus. Do not handle food if you have an infected cut, burn, or sore. If the injury is not infected and you are cleared to handle food, wash your hands, keep the injury clean and bandaged, and wear gloves or other coverings over the affected area.